If you enjoy listening to Career Conversations, why not become a member of the Royal College of Physicians of Edinburgh? Our membership provides you with access to the RCPE educational portal, the live evening medical updates, and you have options to view the symposia both in person or online. If you would like to learn more about this, please go to the Royal College of Physicians of Edinburgh website.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Career Conversations brought to you by the Royal College of Physicians of Edinburgh Trainee and Members Committee. My name's Dr Marilena Giannoudi and I am on the T&MC, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Dr Vig Kandasamy, a trust grade doctor currently working in West Yorkshire. Vig, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. So the topic of this podcast is to talk our listeners through options for jobs outside of a training post. And I know that you've had quite a lot of experience in that at different phases of your training. So could you maybe start by, introducing yourself and telling our listeners what you've done in between your training posts?
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone. My name's Vig Kandasamy. I'm one of the trust grade doctors in West Yorkshire, currently working in Bradford. In terms of my out training experience, I went through F1, F2 as per normal, and then did what's now known as an F3, doing a trust grade job in Bradford Royal Infirmary. Did that for a year, and then moved on to INT, and now I'm doing another trust grade job in between INT3 and ST4 at Bradford again.
Thank you, Vig. So can I ask then, why did you decide to go into an F3 post after your F2? And could you maybe talk us through why you chose to do a trust grade job as opposed to just locuming?
I knew I wanted to do an F3 post, I think probably in third or fourth year of uni, to be honest. Quite early, I guess. I think for me, basically, I was still kind of searching around to know what I wanted to go to training for. Go straight into training from F2. You kind of apply October, November time of F2. So by that point, I'd only done my F1 posts, one surgical, one A&E and one medical, and a couple of months in my medical job. I didn't think there was enough experience for me to know where I wanted to head. There's loads of options I hadn't done yet, such as GP, peds, obviously gynae. Now I know realistically not everyone's going to be able to try everything before they go into it. But I felt there was a couple more options that I wanted to try before making a decision one way or another. So essentially, I think it was a case of nothing really grabbed me to go to training straight away. By having a bit more time to think about it, a bit more experience in different fields, I felt a bit more confident in the decision I was going to make going forward for the next training step. I think in terms of why trust grade rather than locum, I reflected on myself quite sincerely in terms of locuming is good. It gives you more flexibility, but I think over the course of a year, I needed the stability of what a medical rota would give me. Now, maybe if I ended up locuming, I would have been fine and I would have just pulled my socks up and got to grips with, having shifts booked in 6 weeks in advance and, working hard. Knowing myself, I'm sure I would have worked less effectively than I would be on a medical rota. I would have probably gained more from it. Off the top of my head, I found that there would probably be a few more advantages by doing a trust grade job in one department for a while. Just in terms of bolstering the CV a little bit as well. So there's a few more opportunities that can come your way, or it's certainly easier to make those opportunities by working in a department a bit more consistently rather than locuming on an ad hoc basis. Things like setting up teaching opportunities or doing audits and projects. Kind of need a relationship with the department to do that. And going in for ad hoc locums, you may be in one department one day, one department the next, maybe 2 or 3 days in the same, fair enough. And a lot of consultants might get to know you because you're working in different departments. But I think having one base department where it's easier to establish things and set things up was quite important for me because my CV wasn't the strongest at the time. And the opportunity made sense.
I totally understand that. And I guess if you're taking a year out of training where everything has been pre-decided for you, you want to make some decisions, but equally it's a lot to just say, I'm going to locum. I totally take on your point that you weren't 100% sure what you wanted to do, but equally, I guess you must have had a little bit of a hunch that you would have wanted to do something medical. Or did you just spend a trust grade job? Did you go between medical and surgical or GP? How did that work?
So I went purely medical. Well, kind of. I did 6 months of cardiology to begin with, and then moved on to ICU/critical care. Then this small issue happened. You may have heard of it, called the COVID pandemic.
Rings a bell. Yeah, I think that rings.
Yeah. I think you may have heard of it. Because of that, I moved back from ICU. There was loads of anaesthetic trainees, as you could have guessed, coming back from theatres and everything. Moved back onto the medical rota where it was a bit more useful and a bit more needed, which completely made sense. But even in the 2 months I did on the ICU rota, I still learned a lot. But I think I found that out more towards the end of F2, because by then I'd done another surgical job as an SHO, which is different to being an F1 in surgery. And I'd done the GP job at that point as well. And for better or for worse, I figured out that those two weren't for me. But it helped me realize that if the application process worked, that, you kind of applied towards the end of F2 to start in August or September of the next year, I may have thought twice about going into training rather than just grade job, but I felt like I needed a little bit of a break as well, just from portfolio and stuff. Looking back, those portfolio requirements weren't a lot, but at the time it feels like it's, a bit of a slog to get through. By the end of that F2 period, I realized, okay, yeah, medicine is more for me. ICU is obviously something I wanted to rule in or out based on that as well, having not had that much experience of it. Those were the two things I kind of went for.
And I guess you're highlighting two key things that potentially listeners can take away from that. Number one is if you search for a trust grade job that suits you, you can actually tailor it to the way you want. So a trust grade job for a year after a training post doesn't necessarily have to be with one department. And there is scope to work in different departments, especially after F2. I think that's quite common throughout Scotland and England. And it's just about finding that post. The other thing, I guess, then is the timing of applying for these jobs. So I know it was a few years ago, but when do trust grade jobs open for application? Is it, much later on in the year?
The answer to the second point, my applications opened around February to start in August. To be honest, I think it was a similar time for my application for this trust grade job as well, before specialty training. So it's roughly 6 months before the post starts. Different trusts might do it differently, but in general, around West Yorkshire, that's what I've kind of heard. So I think after Christmas in January, if you start looking around or asking around, you'll end up with a bit of an idea as to when the jobs on NHS jobs go up. Generally, even if you know the department, the consultant, and you kind of talk to them informally, there will still be an NHS jobs process to go through, and there's a window for applications and everything, as with everything else that you don't want to miss. Generally, it's about 6 months before, but if you start looking/thinking about it January time, you'd be sure not to miss anything. Seeing as there's even more people that want to do it now since I did it, maybe it's even a bit of a longer lag time because departments and trusts need a bit more time to process things, because I think the popularity of it was popular then, but I think it's even more popular now, really.
So again, I'm just going to highlight for our listeners then that the big difference between applying for a training post is that you apply via Oriel, but for a trust grade job, you apply via NHS Jobs. And in terms of your time during your trust grade job, I know that you mentioned that you use that as, a portfolio building exercise. Was that something that is required of you? Do you keep building on the portfolio that you had during your time in training? Or do you have, a separate portfolio?
So my portfolio was such in terms of the usual mini kexes, CBDs that you do in the foundation program. I didn't really keep much of it. It was quite informal then. It was meant to be done on paper. And then because of the pandemic and everything, appraisals just kind of got forgotten about, really. I think what they recommend, or what I've certainly seen people do, is you can extend the Horus portfolio from the foundation program for another year if you ask the trust. I think even if you don't work in the trust, it's more ideal if you do. You can ask them to extend it. You can email people at Horace to extend it. So then that's quite an easy way of keeping track of everything because you will need an appraisal at the end of the year. For my portfolio building exercises, it was more kind of doing audits and everything, not so much recording it in the portfolio sense, but presenting it and then keeping my own log and then a folder to bring to interview, that kind of thing. Evidence to accompany my application rather than uploading it to Horace or anything like that.
You're doing a trust grade job again now. So have you extended your IMT portfolio or again, are you just keeping it separate?
Just keeping it separately. There is an option to extend the IMT portfolio as well. However, I achieved all the other competencies for that, so I didn't really see the benefit of extending it. So I'm just keeping a kind of separate log of what I'm doing for the purposes of application, really. It certainly helps if you're more organised and you want it in one place than having it online as a bank where you can upload your CVDs, mini kexes. That's easier. I think it depends on how much you want to do and how much you want to keep a portfolio as well. Some people, the benefit of having this year off is not to worry about that kind of thing. Unfortunately, there is a minimum requirement for appraisals and everything. It's certainly not as strenuous as an actual foundation program or, in my case, internal medicine portfolio.
And during these, 2 years of trust grade jobs, did you have a supervisor that you could report to or discuss any problems that you had or your future plans and get advice?
The education supervisor for us at the time was the consultant who kind of ran what in Bradford was called a post-foundation fellow program. In Leeds, it's called junior clinical fellow. They were the kind of educational supervisor that looked through your portfolio every so often if needed. And then a clinical supervisor, there'd be a nominated consultant on each rotation I had. Sometimes nominated, sometimes you kind of have to find it yourself, but I think departments are improving in that aspect now. It's been a few years since the first trust grade job. I think it's really important to have those just in case you do need to speak about things. And I think that's the advice I'd give to people looking for these trust grade jobs is make sure that you have a nominated supervisor or email around until you can either find a consultant that will happily do it for you, or what should really happen is that the department find one for you. You shouldn't have to go asking around yourself. But if you do end up doing it yourself, which is unfortunate, I'd rather put the effort in to have one rather than be without one waiting for it to happen. Just in case, anything goes wrong, you need to chat to someone about it, even if it isn't careers advice or anything. I think it's always important to have someone to report back to in case there is any kind of feedback, positive or negative.
Yeah, could not agree more. I think we all need that support there. Whether we use it or not, it's good to know that it's there. And at the end of the day, we're still all, if I can use the term junior doctors, and I know there's loads of terms being thrown about what we are, but doctors of non-consultant grades, you're always going to need advice. That's just part of working at the level that we're working at. In terms of the rota then, everyone's dreaded consideration. How does it work on a trust grade job with the rota? Do you literally just fill a rota gap? Do you have a bit of say as to what you do? Are you doing more long calls or how does that work?
So I've only ever worked in a place where you go, essentially one of the medical SHOs, whether in my place of work it was the same rota for F2s, IMT1s, IMT2s, and then one in between, and GP trainees on medicine as well, and ACCS for medicine as well. So I just filled in one of those gaps. Was part of the medical SHO brigade. Normal on calls as with everything else. And I've not really known anywhere that doesn't do that now, really. I think there are a few jobs, if you get them, great, but they're very rare now. They were becoming rarer when I applied, but 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, no on-call requirements. Back in the day, there used to be kind of locum jobs like that as well in specific departments where you work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday for locum pay, no on-call requirements. But I think they're like gold dust now, to be honest. Most departments are looking for people that can fulfill on-call roles because that's what they need from the department as well. So it is a bit of a quid pro quo situation, something that we're not always used to in terms of coming into medicine. We go into it with, okay, I've got this degree, going to work for this one employer, going for this job. This is how it's going to work. We don't really shop around in terms of our careers and things like that until we get maybe towards the end of it. So it's quite interesting to see different routes people go down, yeah.
I guess that's something that you can potentially discuss at interview. People are starting to go, less than full time. It's not to say that all trust grade jobs come with, a full space on the rota. As you said, it very much depends on the job, the deanery, and what's needed, really.
I'm sure there's provisions for people to go less than full time as well, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
What do you think has been the best thing about doing your trust grade years?
It gives you the time, to choose which department you want to go into. You're not rotated on to a certain department where you're not that interested in it. You get the kind of flexibility to choose. You may end up not being interested in it, but it gives you a chance to explore what you might be interested in going forward. So in my case, it was cardiology at the time, and also allowed me to explore ICU as well. Yes, you're on call, but you're not always there to fulfill a gap. You're not there to just get mini kexes and CBDs signed off for the sake of it. You have time to build a bit of a relationship with the department. If you end up doing audits and things, it's because you figured out a gap, because you've been there for a bit longer. It's not just 4 months. Mine was 6 months and then varying after that. I think it's essentially the chance to explore what you want to do. At a time where you're an F3, you've done F1 and F2, you're a little bit more confident in yourself. You're not like a consultant or anything like that, obviously, but you know a little bit about what's going on. You kind of know how the hospital works. You know what's expected of you as an SHO. So that bit's all okay. You have the brain space to kind of explore a bit more about, is this something that I want to do going forward, like spending time with the registrars, having chats with the consultant about it. And you can have that variety as well. I didn't do surgery and medicine. I did medicine in ICU, but I know people who have done a bit of surgical, medical and critical care just to really spread their wings wide to see what they want. Essentially, you're doing what you want, but also the variety of what you can do. I think that's the best way to put it.
I guess it's that breathing space and doing things because you want to, not because it's a tick box exercise. And not that we should ever treat the portfolio as that, but sometimes when you're fed up, ARCP is coming around and you think, I haven't got this signed off, It's just extra pressure when you're already under stress because of the nature of the work.
Yeah, I think sometimes getting towards ARCP, you do a couple of reflections and mini kexes on the cases that you may not have learned that much from because you've seen it before, but you need to get it signed off. I found myself discussing cases that were more interesting in general, even if it wasn't interesting for the senior, interesting to me because I hadn't seen it before. A little bit more depth about the specialty, not just the width of it.
I think that's really important. If you could turn back the time, would you still choose to do trust grade job?
So I'd have picked a different year to do it, I think.
I mean, we'd have all picked a different year to be working in the hospital when COVID hit.
So originally my plan for that year was to do 6 of cardio, 4 of ICU, and then 2 months of unpaid leave that I could take at any time. So I was actually going to go traveling for those last 2 months. So if I could have that time, I'd be okay, because I was going to go away Japan or Australia or something, have some fun. If I just had to work full time and not have that kind of time off, I would still do a trust grade job. I don't think I would locum ad hoc. However, I think I'd try and get either 2 months or 3 months where I could go away.
So build in the flexibility.
Yeah. So a bit of flexibility. I don't know if I would go abroad and work. I'd have to think about that one. Yeah.
And, if anyone is considering going abroad to work, we do have another podcast episode on working in Australia under our career conversations, which I will link to this episode's footnotes. You mentioned an appraisal process with your trust grade year. Is that organised for you? And if so, is it similar to an ARCP? Or is that something that you need to organise and is different to an ARCP?
So I think the principle is similar to an ARCP. It's revalidation. They want to make sure that you've been keeping up to date with things in terms of training. It could be in the form of attending conferences, training, courses, or in terms of reflections and things. Whether you need to organise it or not is variable. Each trust will have a revalidation officer, which you'll have to find on the internet as to who that is. And then you can email them and they will essentially go through the local process of how to go about things. I'm sure there's a specific form to fill in and send off. You'll have to find someone to do that appraisal for you. So at our level, it would be a consultant that we've worked with kind of on and off through the year. Probably not your supervisor, but someone that's worked with you. Some trusts, if they're quite experienced at the trust grade jobs now, they might build into the fact, so this is your supervisor and this is the person who's going to appraise you at the end of the year. It may be that you have to do it yourself. It very much depends on the way the job is set up. The main thing is finding out who your revalidation officer is. I'm going to just send them an email and say, what exactly is it that you need from me?
Perfect. Thank you. I feel like we ended on a bit of a more serious note there. I think I will summarise what you've said and correct me if I'm wrong. That you've chosen to do 2 trust grade jobs as time for, breathing and thinking as to what you want to do, building up your portfolio. You've done that whilst working on a rota, but there can be some flexibility on that. You can keep a portfolio if you want to. And again, it's probably advised, but it's not as much pressure to do so as when you're in training. And you will still have to go through a revalidation process, but perhaps, if I could say this, not as strenuous as an ARCPE training. And you enjoyed it, and if you could, you would do it again.
I'd do it again.
I feel like that's us ending on a high. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope it's been useful. Please feel free to listen to any of our other episodes. We've got lots of episodes on different medical specialties under our Career Conversations podcast, and we've got loads of clinical episodes managing patients under Clinical Conversations. Thank you so much for listening. We wish to recommend our Demystifying PACES podcast series on Career Conversations. As some of you may know, in late 2023, MRCP UK updated the PACES exam format, so we developed this new series to support PACES candidates. Episodes cover exam organisation, calibration, every PACES station including key changes, and candidate perspectives.